Praise be to God, there is no other God except God. Um, I hope Ramadan went well for, I guess, all of us, hopefully. It's a month where we hopefully eat less. Most people eat less. Some of them overeat after they break the fast, but most people eat less. And so less food for the body, but more food for the soul. So it's a nice package of good deeds which we fulfilled during the last month, the month which just passed, the month of Ramadan. Now let me get actually to the topic which I want to talk about today. Is I want to talk about an alternative approach to dealing with Hadith. As we know, the standard approach which we use to deal with Hadith is that we simply looked at all the. By the way, and this approach is given in the video in the Friday sermon, which I titled. I think the title is something like, "What does the Quran really say about Hadith?" So if you find that video, which is titled, "What does the Quran really say about Hadith?" you'll see that the Quran actually doesn't tell us to follow Hadith. It actually speaks against Hadith, except for cases when it can be used for historical sources, but not for religious purposes. It might be useful for historians, like for scholars of history, for people who want to maybe study comparative history or things like that. Yeah, that might be useful. But for religious purposes, for us, for pretty much all the people, for our religion, Hadith is not useful at all. It's actually against the Quran, and in most cases, it's damaging. It damages our life. So the approach which we used let's say in that video, but our standard approach is that we don't follow Hadith for religious purposes. We do not obey Hadith for religious purposes. We do not believe that Hadith should be used for religious purposes. And but there's another alternative approach, which I kind of want to introduce, especially because there's so many heated debates which lead to nothing. There's so many debates online: Hadith, no Hadith, Hadith, no. Should we use Quran alone? Should we do Quran and Hadith? Should we? So the debates are so heated. Sometimes it's not even constructive. Like people will try to talk over each other and things like that. So a lot of times it's not even constructive. So an alternative approach would be, and it's not the only approach, but an alternative approach would be to kind of just not deal with it, not try to answer the question. Instead of saying, "Oh, should we follow Hadith or should we not follow Hadith?" we use another verse in the Quran, which can sort of let us use another approach to Hadith and sort of reach the same conclusions. And the verse I want to focus on today is it's in Surah 21, verse 23. And the verse says, God is never to be asked about anything he does, while all others are questioned. So basically, the conclusion is, if God says something, he should not be asked why he did it. Why? He should not be asked why. But if others say or do something, they can be asked why. So this is a principle. If God says it, you don't ask why. If someone else says it, you ask why. If someone else other than God says something, then you are allowed to ask why. And there's like deep reasons for this. The basic reason is that when God tells you to do something, let's say God tells us not to eat pork, asking why, it's really not that it's not useful anyway, because there are billions of reasons why you shouldn't eat pork, but all of them are small. Like, it's only when you combine all of them together can we reach the conclusion that we shouldn't eat pork. So asking God, why shouldn't we eat pork, it doesn't really make sense, because I can say, let's say, oh, maybe it has parasites. Oh, that's not good enough reason. Maybe cows sometimes have parasites. Maybe not as much, but they do. So if I say, oh, it's good for the economy, you might say, oh, yeah, but there are other things which are not that good for economy. We still do them. If I say, oh, maybe pork has too much fat, so you'll get fat. Oh, but other things have lots of fat. I don't know. There are other foods with lots of fat. Butter. Should we not eat butter as well? So as you can see, all the arguments I can give, if I try to answer the question why we shouldn't eat pork, none of them are enough. But only when you combine all of them, and there's billions of them, because God can think about all of them at the same time, only when you combine all of them together can you reach the conclusion that we shouldn't eat pork. There's so many other reasons. I don't even want to go there, because we shouldn't ask God why. God says, don't eat pork. If we ask why, the best answer is because God says so. If God says don't eat pork, then don't eat pork. So that's the answer. The answer is always God said so. And there's a million, billion reasons for it, infinite reasons for it. So the question why is when we're dealing with what God said is really not useful at all. Plus, it questions God's authority. You don't ask someone who is higher authority why. Why do you do this? Why did you say that? That's God should ask that to us. Not we shouldn't ask God that. So so basically, when God says something, we don't ask why, or does something, we don't ask why. But when humans do or say something, we ask why. We can ask why. If it does, especially if it doesn't make sense, we should ask why. So then, this is sort of the basic idea, and we can use this for Hadith. We don't have, even if we don't decide about Hadith at all, let's say we don't want to go into those debates, because sometimes they are very heated. Heated debates sometimes don't really help. Sometimes they don't help. So if, let's say, another way not to have heated debates is that we use this principle in the Quran, which says that God should never be asked why, while others can be asked why, or all others will be asked why. Then we use this principle and we say, every time someone brings something from the Quran, we don't ask why. But every time someone brings something from the Hadith, we ask why. And that's pretty much shuts the conversation, because pretty much almost all Hadiths, the religious leaders cannot tell you why. For example, the night of destiny, according to Hadith, the night of destiny is on the 27th night of Ramadan, according to one Hadith. According to another Hadith, the night of destiny is on the 25th. According to another Hadith, the night of destiny is on the last 10 nights of Ramadan. According to another Hadith, the night of destiny is on the odd nights of the last 10 nights of Ramadan. According to another Hadith, the night of destiny is on the 19th. According to another Hadith, the night of destiny is on the 21st. Another Hadith says on the 23rd. Another Hadith says Muhammad knew when the night of destiny was, but he forgot. Someone asked him a question while he was thinking about it. Someone interrupted Muhammad, and Muhammad forgot. Another Hadith says that the night of destiny changes constantly. Another Hadith says that we cannot know when. So all of these Hadith, and they are, by the way, if you ask the scholars, oh, how come there's so much contradiction about this? They all say different things. They'll probably tell you something like, oh, some Hadith are authentic, verified, others are not authentic, and stuff. But if you ask them specifically, these Hadith which we mentioned, these, let's say, 10 different Hadith about the same topic, different answer for the same topic. If you ask them, they are these actually the authentic ones, what they call Sahih, the verified ones, the authentic ones. They consider all of them authentic or verified, according to them. So then how come they give you different answers? And the way to deal with it is to ask them why. So why, if they say the night of destiny, according to Hadith, is on the 27th, why? Why should it be on the 27th? Can you give me a logical reason why? Why not 28? What's so special about 27? Why not 29? So all you have to do is ask why. And they cannot give you an answer. And you're allowed to ask why, because humans are allowed to ask why. You are allowed to ask a human being why. Because Hadith, at the end of the day, was spoken by Muhammad. They say that it's Muhammad's word. So we can ask Muhammad why, but we cannot ask God why. So all we have to do is ask why. Hadith is on the odd nights of Ramadan. Why? Why should it be that? Hadith is on changes. Why? Why does it change? Why doesn't it always stay the same? Why? Just ask why. And it sort of shuts the conversation. They cannot give you an answer. If they give you an answer, then it's logical. Then it makes sense. But all you have to do is ask why. And honestly, like, it's so interesting how they don't ask why. Like, it's millions of Sunnis are told Hadith is on the 27th. They never ask why. They don't have the guts, the courage to ask why. Why is it on the 27th? And they cannot give you an answer. And someone might say, oh, but you don't even know some of the answers. Wait a minute. So let me give you an example. Ramadan, we say, has sometimes 29 days, sometimes 30. If you ask me why, I can tell you. Anyone can tell you, because it's correct. Why does Ramadan have 29 days and sometimes 30 days? Why is it that specific number of days? Because that's how long it takes the moon to go around the earth. It's from a new moon until a new moon. More specifically, like the definition of the new moon, I give it in another video, but it's basically from a new moon until a new moon. And it takes the moon about 29.5 days to do that rotation, to go around the earth. It takes the moon 29.5 days, and sometimes it happens to be on the side which is closer to the 29. Sometimes it happens to be closer to the 30, but it's about 29.5. So depending where we cut, like which day, when the day happens. So it's either going to lean towards 30 or towards 29. So that's the reason. We can answer it. But if you ask them, why is it on the 27th? Why is the night of the destiny on the 27th? They cannot tell you why, because they don't know. And they still follow it despite not knowing. And by the way, in the video where I speak about the night of destiny, I tell people why. Why is the night of destiny on that specific date? It happens to be most of the time on the 27th, but it has nothing to do with the 27th. Like there's nothing special about number 27 or number 25 or not number 23. For this matter, not even number 19. There's nothing special about that. But they don't ask why. They don't ask why. So if we just ask them why is Hadith, why is this specific in the Hadith, this specific thing in the Hadith so, they cannot tell you. Why on the 27th? So all you have to do is ask why. Whenever they bring a Hadith, all you have to do is ask why. Oh, you are supposed to spit when the devil tempts you or whatever. Why? If they cannot tell you why, then it's not good enough. It has to be logical. Anything humans bring up, it has to be logical. What God says, even if it's not logical, we have to follow, because God has billions of reasons. God can think about all the things at once. Humans cannot think about everything at once. So if there's some truth to it, they should be able to explain it. So yeah, all we have to do is ask why. That's one example. Let's say the night of destiny. If we just ask them why, they cannot explain it, so therefore we don't have to follow it. Oh, I would have followed that Hadith, but you didn't tell me why. Sorry. You said 27th. Why? Oh, you don't know? Oh, so I don't follow it. Thank you for your suggestion. So let me give you another example. Or before I give you the other example, let's repent. Praise be to God, there is no other God except God. Let's take another example of when we just ask why when someone brings a hadith, or it sort of solves the issue. By the way, let me repeat again. We shouldn't ask that when someone brings something from the Quran. We shouldn't say why. We don't ask God why. But when someone brings a hadith, which is a human saying, then we ask why. All we have to do is ask why. So millions of Sunnis and Shias believe in something which is called zakatul fitr. So basically, the idea of the zakat, what they call zakatul fitr, is that during Ramadan, according to them, you are supposed to give about 3 kilograms of flour, of wheat, or maybe dates. So about 3 kilograms of wheat you're supposed to give to the poor. And this is what they call zakatul fitr. And it should be done before the end of Ramadan so that your Ramadan is accepted. That's kind of what they believe in. And all you have to do to tackle this is ask them why. Why? Why should I give 3 kilograms of flour during Ramadan? And they cannot give you a reason. No one, like they had 14 centuries to think about this. All the scholars, they cannot tell you why. All you have to ask them is why. Why should I give 3 kilograms? They'll tell you, oh, Muhammad says so, but that's not good enough. Because we can ask the human beings why. I would even ask Muhammad why. Why 3 kilograms? Why during Ramadan? Why wheat? Why dates? Why not rice? So all you have to do is ask them why, and you'll see that they can. If they don't give you an answer, you don't have to follow it. If they don't give you a logical answer. So regarding zakatul fitr, unfortunately, I can give an answer and to show that it sort of doesn't apply anymore. So the issue with zakatul fitr, what they call the zakatul fitr, which is the zakat during Ramadan, is the idea. Let me just tell you the idea behind it, and then kind of sort of demolish it, why that idea doesn't apply anymore. So if there was a reason, which I think probably there was a reason, I don't think it would remain in history like that, but they cannot explain the reason to us now, so we don't have to follow it. What I'm saying is, let me actually help them. See, I'm helping their side. Let me help them give a reason. Because none of the so-called Muslim scholars, the Sunnis and the Shias, can give a reason why zakatul fitr should be done like that. Or why should it exist? So let me help them first, so then I can destroy it. Let me help them with their own arguments. So here's the idea. The idea of the zakatul fitr is that in the past, when during Muhammad's time, people, unlike today, people would pretty much store the food. They wouldn't go to shops to buy stuff. Like, I mean, they had a market, but they would buy the material, the food for the whole year. So basically, they bought the food for when it was harvested. If you needed, let's say, some flour or some things, you would buy it when it was harvested from whoever was selling it. If you didn't harvest it yourself, and then you would store it for the whole year. You'd have, let's say, a depot in your home, and then you'd have food for the whole year. That's how they did it typically. Even to this day, in some poorer countries, they still do it like that, but very rarely, almost never. But traditionally, that's how it was done. People would buy food for the whole year. And then what would happen is they would sort of try to estimate how much food they need for the whole year for the whole family. So let's say this year, I estimate, let's just imagine we live in the past. Let's say I have 20 family members, and I'm going to estimate that this year we need this many bags of flour, this many bags of meat. Probably they would dry it because it would go bad. They had no fridges. This many, I don't know, this much oil, this many bottles of oil. I What else did it? Like the basics. They would make sure that they had the basics. And or milk, but they would probably make it into cheese so it lasts longer. So they had these basics, staple foods. And they would make sure that they have it for the whole year. This was in the past. And that estimation, let's say, would be done by the family head, and he would make sure that everyone has food for the whole year. And they would go in the market and buy it. Even, let's say, how many cows he needed to buy it so they can slaughter them at a certain point. So that's what they did. Now, at the same time, they didn't know exactly when Ramadan will start and end because they didn't have the calculation methods like us, computers and scientists and astronomers. So they would rely on the moon, which is normal. It was normal then to rely on the moon. They didn't know exactly how to calculate it. They had approximations, but they were not very accurate. Today we have really accurate methods. But then it was not very accurate. So they would just rely on the moon. When the new moon happened, they would start Ramadan. And I mean, when the new moon of the ninth month happened, they would start the Ramadan. So when the new moon again happened, they would end the Ramadan. So this was, let's say, the circumstance. And in that circumstance, imagine they had estimated the whole food for the year, but something which they hadn't estimated was that part of that food was not used because they had fasted, and then because of the fasting, they ate a little bit less. And the Quran says they tell you what to give the excess meaning what is left. So basically, they just realized, oh, wait a minute, we have more food than we thought. So kind of like it's just a feeling. They didn't go into specific calculations. But let's say Muhammad was, oh, wait a minute. Actually, during this month, we ate a little bit less. So technically, we have more food. And that's excess. That's more than we needed. So let's give it away. And that's pretty much how much less people eat. So about 3 kilograms of flour, of wheat, is about 10,000 calories. And during a month, a person typically eats about 70,000 calories. And so that's about 1/7 of, or 1/10, depending on how people eat. But let's say about 1/7 or 1/8. So about 1/8 of the food which you would have eaten in other months, you ate about 1/8 less calories, which means that was left. And those calories, by the way, why is that approximately that? It's approximately that because let's say you eat one less meal, which would be actually 1/3 less, because let's say you eat breakfast, you eat lunch, you eat dinner. Typically, someone might eat that. During Ramadan, you don't eat lunch, but you can eat the dinner and you can eat the breakfast earlier. However, you don't, let's say, eat 1/3 less because whatever you don't eat at lunch, you can kind of make up during dinner. But you cannot make up everything because the stomach doesn't allow to kind of eat 2 meals at once. You can probably, when you break the fast, you probably eat 1.5 meals. So that means that you sort of during Ramadan, you didn't eat 7,000 calories if you estimate it, but you didn't eat, 70,000 calories, but you ate 60,000 calories. So 10,000 calories less, which means that you have 10,000 calories of food more left. And typically that's left in either wheat or dates or whatever in that time. It was left in that. So they gave it away, the excess. So that's the logical reason behind it. So if someone asked me during Muhammad's time why, I would explain why, and they would probably do it. But I can also tell them that none of these pretty much don't apply as much. So it kind of, in some ways, it doesn't apply at all, but in some ways, it applies very little. So it really doesn't apply as much. It's insignificant today. Why? The question is why now? Why we shouldn't focus or do even bother to think about zakatul fitr. The reason is, first of all, we don't store the food for 1 year like in the past. So our estimation was not really thrown off. We don't even have enough food for Ramadan. We go to buy pretty much every week or every other day, or I don't know how other people do the shopping, but typically, I think today, including me, we do shopping every week, every 2 or 3 days. So in some places every day, some places every 2 weeks, depending. So that there was no estimation in the first place at all. So there was no excess. Second of all, if there's any excess, so let me kind of tell you who should do the zakatul fitr. Maybe that's the better approach. If there was any excess, it was the food shops. Here in US, in Canada, we have Walmart, Costco. I don't know, in other countries, they have different shops. So the food shops did an estimation, about the whole year, how much people need. And very likely because of Ramadan, they sold a little bit less. So they should give. So my answer to zakatul fitr is, we don't have to give it. Big food shops, it applies to them for the most part. So it's a matter for businesses, for the food shops. If they want to give a sort of presents with flour, it's their problem. So zakatul fitr today for us is almost insignificant. Oh, by the way, plus in addition to that, in the past, during Muhammad's time, they had a really regular sleeping schedule. So the fact that they didn't eat lunch during Ramadan meant that they ate less food. A lot of people today just sleep during the day, so they still eat the same amount of food. By the way, that's allowed, because then you pay through worse health. If you sleep during the day during Ramadan, that's because you don't have a good sleeping schedule, and because of that, you'll pay through health effects. Later on in life, you'll be older faster, or not very healthy, because it's not a very healthy lifestyle to stay during the night and sleep during the day. It's not as healthy. It's allowed, though. It is allowed, but it's not as healthy. So what I'm saying is, it doesn't even apply to today, because it's not necessary that you ate less food during Ramadan. For them, during Muhammad's time, it was necessary, because pretty much for most people, because that's how they lived. They didn't use electricity like today. So pretty much, zakatul fitr doesn't even apply for another reason, is because we don't necessarily eat less food. And someone might say, oh, but does fasting count? It does, because even though you might not have eaten less food, the fact that you slept during the day and stayed during the night, you have worse health, and so you paid for it. You paid for it in another way, through health instead of through food. So you have to kind of, zakatul fitr for you would be to give some health back, or to have a better diet outside of Ramadan, a better sleeping schedule. That's zakatul fitr for today. That's our zakatul fitr. 3 kilograms of flour. Who even uses that flour? I mean, very few people use it. Today, if you do that, what they say you should do, it will probably cost more, because you don't have it at home. They had it at home. We would have to go to the shop, spend probably, for some people, more fuel than the actual deed. So do more bad than good by turning the car on, or walking, or whatever, taking the bus, having to go there, buying the flour. Who are you going to give it to? So it just doesn't apply. And all we have to do to give an answer to this is, when they say you have to do zakatul fitr, all you have to do is ask them why. And they cannot give you a reason. I gave you a reason, but as we can see, the reason only applies to the past. And today it might apply to the big food companies. The companies who store the flour, the companies who store the oil, those companies, yeah, it does apply to them, but companies are not people, so who cares if they give it or not? Companies will not be judged during the last day. People will be judged, but not companies, not businesses. The people will be judged. So yeah, that's kind of the answer. Uh, and by the way, this is the zakat al-fitr. It doesn't apply for. I gave you 2 reasons. There's more reasons why it doesn't apply, but even the parts which do apply are very insignificant. They are so small, so it's probably not 3 kilograms. It's probably 3 grams, or 5 grams, or 10 grams. Who's going to calculate that? Does it even make sense to talk about it? We do so much worse things in other areas. So to all the Sunni Muslims, let's not even call them Muslims, to all the Sunnis and the Shias who say, oh, you should do zakat al-fitr or whatever, I think it would be better for them if they, let's say, during the year didn't honk their cars when they drive. That actually they would do better. Like they would do better deeds. That would be bigger than zakat al-fitr which they give, which is kind of almost useless now. I was to India in a heavily so-called Sunni populated area, so-called Muslim, and they were honking the horns all day long in traffic. Even inside the homes, you can hear it. You're at home, and they honk the car. Like there's so much traffic, of course, and everyone honks the car all day long. You can hear it all day long. Each individual doesn't do it all day long, but you can hear it all day long. That's so stressful. If they just stop that would be better than zakat al-fitr. And exactly those people will actually bring the ideas of zakat al-fitr, this and that things. They are talking about 3 grams of flour, because today 3 kilograms don't apply, as we concluded. There's no reason for 3 kilograms anymore. Let the shops do it. But 3 grams might apply. So they spend hours and hours talking about it, and even I'm forced to talk about it today. I didn't even want to talk about it, but I'm kind of forced to talk about it because they mention it so much. They talk about 3 grams of flour. That would be my estimation, how important it is today. 3 grams of flour. I don't know, in dollars, that's very little. 1 cent, 2 cents, 3 cents, I don't know. Probably 10 cents. Okay, so they talk about 10 cents. I don't know how much it is. So they talk about 10 cents while honking all year long, giving each other stress. And by the way, that honking either does some psychological damage, or if it doesn't, it makes the person more mean, because the person has to learn how to cut off all the influence from the outside. Then when someone tells them something important, they have learned how to block their ears. They can just block their mind. It's easier for them to block the mind because of all that honking. Or if they don't, they have some psychological damage. There's too much pressure. I don't even know how to make the sound. So the Sunni Muslims would have been better off if they just didn't honk and didn't do zakat al-fitr. And let me give you an example. What do I mean that zakat al-fitr as today has become very insignificant? Just an example. So let's say you live, let's say your mom tells you, you throw a branch of wood or whatever at home in the floor, in the ground. You throw a branch in the ground. Your mom will say, oh, don't throw a branch in the ground. But then you go to the forest, and that's probably good advice. Don't throw the branch in the ground. Like, it's a clean home. Why should you throw the branch? But you go, maybe you're walking in the forest. How significant is it to apply the same principle in the forest? Oh, don't throw a branch in the forest. Why? There's so many branches in the forest. What is it going to do? It might do a little bit of bad, but it's insignificant. It's insignificant. How bad can it be to throw a branch in the forest? It's full of branches. So that's how zakat al-fitr is today. It's like they are trying to protect, let's say, the environment in a place where it's full of that. It's insignificant. It doesn't apply in so many ways, but even the part which applies is insignificant. The word insignificant means we shouldn't even bother to deal with it. Uh, so yeah, and by the way, these only survive, these illogical things only survive in places where there's authorities. Let me give you an example. So let's say in North Korea, they prohibit the officials from using the word ice cream. They are not allowed to say ice cream or hamburger. In North Korea, you cannot, if you're an official, you cannot say ice cream or hamburger because that's too Western. And these ridiculous rules only can exist when there's authorities who will make them, because otherwise people have better logic than that. If they use the logic, they'd probably reach better conclusions. Let me give an example. For example, where they probably use the logic because the authorities didn't interfere there. So let's say in the past, people didn't wear shoes at home. It's quite logical. You don't want to make the home unclean. It's quite logical. But then you go to an office. Should you apply the same rule? It's kind of a home. It's a building. It's inside. At work, should you remove your shoes as well? Or is working with shoes just fine? I think it's just fine. So when authorities didn't interfere, people just naturally realized that, oh, wait a minute, it doesn't apply anymore. So they told me at home not to wear the shoes. That kind of makes sense. Not always, by the way. People have pets these days. Why should removing the shoes be a rule? Or the outside is sometimes clean. Some countries really have a very clean outside. So it's kind of pretty much like walking inside as well. So even in that case, it's not very important to remove the shoes. In a lot of cases, though, it is important to remove the shoes. Probably in most cases. But when you go to an office, why should you remove the shoes? Do you want other people to smell your feet? Should you smell their feet? In an office where you work and sweat all day long or whatever, or sit at the desk, why should you remove the shoes? So it doesn't make, so if you let people use the logic, in that circumstance, they will reach the right conclusion. They would have reached the right conclusion even about zakat al-fitr if they used logic. But unfortunately, authorities tell them something else, and people are too afraid to think for themselves. So it's only authorities which sort of keep the idea of zakat al-fitr existing. Other than that, people would use logic, and they would reach a better conclusion. Oh, three kilograms of flour, I have to go and buy it. Well, it doesn't really make sense in today's world. Yeah, they reach the right conclusion, especially if they knew why. Why would Muhammad say so? So yeah, all we have to do is ask them why, and I helped them with answering the why. And answering the why also tells us that for today it's not significant, and in some aspects it doesn't apply at all. So that's it about the I just gave two examples of dealing with hadith in an alternative way by simply asking why. All you have to do is ask why. Why is that rule so? Why should we spit on our left? Why should we do this? If you just ask why, then you can resolve the issue of the hadith. We shouldn't ask why when it comes to the Quran. We shouldn't never ask God why, but we ask the people why. So yeah, that's it. And just another small administrative thing before we leave. So a lot of people recently, thanks to God, a lot of people have sent me actually emails about that they wanted to join, and I just didn't have time. Maybe I had time, but like I have my inbox is really full, so I haven't replied to many emails. So, and they, as you know, some of you who work, you know, when you don't answer them, they just pile up more emails. So yeah, I figured that probably and a lot of those emails were a lot of people wanted to join the submitters. So I had delayed this for a while. So God willing, if you're listening, if you're one of those people who wanted to join the submitters and I haven't answered your email, let me answer it through here. So if you go, let me share the screen. So basically, I've done it through the website now. You don't need to send an email. Let me share the screen. So if you go to our website, to the main page, here in the end, I added this part. How do I join the submitters? To become a submitter, you have to attend the live Friday gathering, which we're doing right now. And second part is fill the public zakat pledge form. So all you have to do is click this last link in the main page of our website, and then you fill the form. And then when I have time, I'll check whether you filled it correctly. And if you did, God willing, when I have time, I will add you to the group of submitters. So all you have to do, whoever is listening to the live Friday gathering, all you have to do is go to this link and fill the zakat form. And God willing, when I have time, I'll check who did it. And then I'll add you to the list of submitters in our website. And that's it. For those who have to do the contact prayer, do the contact prayer. For the rest of you, peace be upon you.